If employees using AI chat apps was, a fire, agentic is pouring, jet fuel on the fire. It's a big deal. Someone asked his agent to reoptimize his file system, and it deleted all his files.
No more errors. Errors are all gone.
Funny because after it wiped out all of her email, and she's talking, prompting the agent saying, "Why did you do that?" And the agent says, "You're right to be angry with me."
Hello, and welcome to AI Curious. My name is Jeff Wilser. I'm a journalist, I'm a human, and I am curious about AI. All right, picture this. You work in customer support at a payment processing company. It's a Tuesday, you're writing an email to a client, and like many of us, maybe you use a bit of AI to improve the email or write the email for you, whatever, right? So you paste the email in ChatGPT, ask it to clean up your grammar, that kind of thing. Reasonable, right? Helpful. Many of us do it. Except this email contained 100 live credit card numbers. They are now in some form sitting on a server somewhere outside your company, possibly being used to train a model, possibly seen by a human reviewer. You don't know. Nobody's sure. And nobody told your boss. All right, this actually happens. And according to my guest today, some version of that story is happening right now, as at every company on the planet right now. This is all a different flavor of what we're calling shadow AI usage. There are marketers uploading customer lists, finance people pasting earnings reports, developers, and this is a real one, uploading entire source code into a mobile app that does billions of dollars a year and asking ChatGPT to help me optimize this. That's happening. Devs are sending in source code because at many, many companies, employees are maybe supposed to be using only one model, like the one authorized model, which commonly is Microsoft Copilot. And they're like, F it. I don't care if this is unauthorized. I'm going to use ChatGPT. I'm going to use Claude. I'm going to use the latest and greatest because real talk, often the models that are authorized by the company might have more guardrails and the company might be a little slower to get the absolute latest, shiniest toy dropped by Anthropic or OpenAI. So welcome to the world of shadow AI. It is happening everywhere. Whether we know it or not, whether we like it or not, employees are using AI tools that has not been approved and data that probably shouldn't leave the building with good intentions and a complete lack of guardrails. So that brings us to today's guest, Rick Caccia, the co-founder and CEO of Witness AI, which has built what's essentially a security layer that sits between your employees and the thousands, yes, thousands of AI tools they are talking to. Rick has spent 30 years in the enterprise security, Palo Alto Networks, Google Cloud, and so on. And he started this company after watching his own CEO tell everyone to go become AI enabled. This is arguably the biggest untold, kind of underreported story happening in business and AI right now. That's for all the guardrails company might want to have, employees are still just using AI however they like millions and millions of employees. So if you're a leader, what do you do? What do you tell your employees? You're kind of in a pickle between you have the security that you want to prioritize, but you also might hear from employees, well, they're actually more productive and getting a lot done with these kind of shadow AI tools. Rick and I get into all of that. We get into the 60% of AI usage of companies has nothing to do with work, right? So we get into the Chipotle chatbot that someone tricked into doing $10,000 worth of Python homework, the car dealership chatbot that sold a truck for $1, the chatbots that are recommending your competition. And the big question underneath all of this, how does a leader say yes to AI without saying yes to chaos? So with that, please welcome Rick Caccia, co-founder and CEO of Witness AI. Rick, welcome to AI Curious.
Thanks, Jeff. I'm happy to be here.
So as I understand it, your location when ChatGPT kind of first exploded, you were at you were in Palo Alto and you saw employees using it and you realized, okay, there will be challenges here. Set the scene for us. Take us through that moment and how it kind of kindled your concerns about the shadow AI world, if you will.
Yeah, sure thing. It's a good question. So this was late 2022. I'm a senior vice president at Palo Alto Networks. ChatGPT hits the scene. The CEO, who's a very forward-thinking person, said, "Hey, this is going to change how everyone does their job. All of you go away and become a AI-enabled marketer, accountant, developer, whatever." Everyone ran away for 2 weeks and did it. 2 weeks later, one of the execs gets up and says, "Oh my God, the amount of information that's been shared with this thing is crazy. Everyone needs to immediately stop. And only this guy in the CTO's office is allowed to use this tool anymore." And it was an interesting thing to go through because it seemed pretty clear that every other company on the planet was about to go through the same thing.
Yeah. And by information, can you give some examples of what types of documents and data that probably should be confidential were just ingested whole hog into ChatGPT?
Yeah. So this is the case. I'll make it more general. Like I've talked to hundreds and hundreds of companies and they all went through the same thing. So the marketers uploaded marketing plans or customer lists and said, "ChatGPT, help me figure out which segments to target." Accountants or finance people might have uploaded earnings reports and said, "Help me figure out, how to tune this." Developers uploaded source code. One of the companies I spoke with, they do literally billions of dollars on a mobile app each year, and a developer uploaded the entire code base to ChatGPT and said, "Help me optimize this." So you can pick pretty much any job title, any job role. And there was some point in the year after ChatGPT hit, where somebody tried to use it to do their job better. And in the process, potentially leaked a lot of data.
And just to be crystal clear on this, of what the possible downsides and worst case scenarios exist when that happens. Talk a bit about to what extent, if you send something confidential and privileged into ChatGPT, that could be used for future training, or could be seen not just by OpenAI, but potentially other companies in the future also. Kind of paint a picture of, I think a lot of listeners get a sense, oh, that's bad, but maybe help us understand how bad is that. What are the stakes really?
And this is not unique to ChatGPT in any way. So this is just to generalize, say, of the 20,000 AI apps that are out there that your employees may be talking to, literally, where's the risk? The risk is all of these things have APIs. Do they store every prompt that you have and put it away for training their model later on? Maybe, some do. Some may not. Some may have policies to prevent it. So for example, there was a while where people were worried about this with ChatGPT, and then they said, "Oh no, I have the enterprise version, and I'm not worried about my data being shared." Great. One of the issues we find in customers now is they've paid for the enterprise version with data protection, but they have no idea if their employees are still using the personal version without the data protection. Same with Microsoft Copilot. We pay Microsoft for the enterprise Copilot. We're not worried about our data being shared. Oops, we have 1,000 employees who are using Copilot Personal that just got turned on inside of Word. Don't know what's happening there. So there's a version of that where I don't know what apps my employees are even using because there's so many. I don't know what they're sharing with those apps. And I really often don't have any idea outside of kind of the main ones that we all know about, whether those apps are even legit or whether those are just honeypots to steal your data.
Okay. A lot of different threads to pull out here. Let's start with a minor question about the enterprise solution. Do you have a sense that, for context, I recently spoke at a construction company for a workshop on AI strategy. And one of the employees asked, a good question of, okay, even if we use the enterprise version of one of the big labs, right? As you pointed out, could be a handful. Like, do we really have confidence that this data, our customers like our absolute sacrosanct IP from our customers, right? And this company happens to work with well-known tech companies that just they would it would be disastrous if their customers' IP got into was spilled out in the open, right? So what extent can companies really trust that enterprise theoretically walled off private kind of domain for data?
Jeff, it's a spectrum. So on one extreme, let's say you're using enterprise copilot. I think realistically, most corporate C-level execs, the CIO, the CISO, are going to trust that if they're paying Microsoft and have a contract with Microsoft to protect their data and not, leak their data, that Microsoft isn't going to do that. One extreme, like let's, people can talk about Microsoft, but I think it's a reasonable thing to assume that.
Yeah, or just a quick interjection. As one CSO shared with me, look, if we trust it for email and whatever you would feel comfortable putting in for Outlook or for Excel, you feel comfortable putting in AI because it's effectively the same place in it's a Microsoft enterprise. So sorry to cut you off.
Right. No. It's a really good point. So that's a great point to make. So at one extreme, there are the large organizations where you can say, look, we pay for a trusted workspace and we expect to have a trusted workspace and we're fine with that. At the other extreme, there are literally thousands or tens of thousands of apps that are AI apps that you and I have never heard of that companies have no reason to believe they've blocked because they've never heard of them. Mm-hmm. And employees are using those and you have no idea what's happening there.
Yeah.
And those could be vertical things like I have a new legal app and my lawyers are putting client data in there. They shouldn't be, but they are. Yeah. I have a new accounting app. My accountants are doing like, all those things. Somewhere along that spectrum, not too far from the big company extreme, the trust really starts to fall off because you just don't know.
Yeah. Let's, let me more, I guess now, properly define this problem of the idea of a shadow AI workforce. And maybe that's a clickbaity title, but a provocative phrase. But that's essentially what we're talking about. The idea of you're a leader and you have some policy of only using maybe a classic policy we've all seen is like, okay, you can use Cowork and that's it. But a lot of employees, they kind of want to use, oh, look at that. Anthropic just launched a new model or OpenAI did. They want the latest and greatest. And I'll editorialize and say it. Often the sanctions models for employees at corporations might not be latest and greatest. They're a little bit nerfed to be as safe as possible. So you have employees trying to get their hands on the most fun tools and toys and using that, right? So doing that maybe on their phone, maybe on their work computer, maybe on their personal computer, maybe at home, whatever it is, right? So that, first off, am I defining that appropriately in your mind of what this kind of this shadow AI usage in companies, and or how would you modify that characterization?
Yes, there's a couple things I would call out. The first is, look, we have seen through our customer base a lot of security or data security incidents. In very few cases was it malicious. So when we talk about shadow AI, the thing to understand is you're an average person working at some company. What have you heard for the last 3 years? Nothing except these tools are amazing. They're magic. They'll make you 10 times more productive. Of course, people are going to want to use them. We've told them it's like giving you a magic wand or a jetpack or like, with rocket shoes to go run. Like, of course, you're going to want to put them on and go run. So the first thing to understand is people want to use these things with best intention and become more productive because that's all they've heard about.
Yeah.
Two, the explosion of these AI apps is unreal. I mean, there were hundreds, a couple of years ago, then thousands, now tens of thousands. So there's an explosion. So you have people who want to use these amazing tools they hear about. There are more of them than ever.
Mm-hmm.
And so that puts you in a situation where the default stance of no problem, we're blocking all the bad stuff, but my employees can use the good stuff. Like, okay, how do you know?
That's
And they say,
whack-a-mole,
well,
right? For
it's
every one.
whack-a-mole.
Yeah, exactly.
But so I'll give you some examples. So, they'll say, well, I have a corporate network security proxy. I have Zscaler. And we just use Zscaler to block stuff. Like, okay, but what we see all the time with these kind of proxy companies is they false positive. They mistakenly block non-AI legitimate apps as AI. And then you have angry employees who can't do their job. Or false negatives, they miss new apps and employees use those things. So the notion that my legacy security stuff is somehow going to magically work and that I'm going to somehow magically be able to block everything except for Copilot, in practice, it never works that way. So I think what you have to do as a CIO or CISO is think about, I want to enable this stuff. I want to make my employees more productive. What do I have to put in place to let them do that in a fast changing, highly evolving world that's going to move faster than my firewall can keep up?
Yeah. Before we get into solution mode, we'd love to kind of sketch out the problem a little more. Do you have any sense, any data, any research on how widespread this, to your point, problem, right? Shadow and problem implies it's some malicious thing. Of course it's not. Of course, there are people trying to do their job better, well-intentioned. But from the context of security challenge, we'll call it a problem. How big of an issue is this? Any way to quantify that?
I'll say a couple things. One, in practice, when witness AI is hooked up to a corporate network, we typically find 10 times the number of shadow apps than the company thinks they have. They think they're using 5, they're actually using 50. They think they're using 10, they're actually using 100. So there's more in there. Then, more recently, we've had agents. So it's not just shadow AI, like you talking to something in a browser or with something on your desktop. It's also agents. So now I have shadow agentic, and there are thousands and thousands of MCP servers. So there's a lot of those things there. So I can't keep track of all of this stuff, and I need to control it. And that's been a big deal.
Yeah.
Then the next thing we can get to maybe in a sec, but it's not just how do I control it, but more recently with the rapid adoption, it's how do I control the costs in addition to the access, which is so I would say 6 months ago, customers didn't ask about costs because they weren't using it enough. The last 2 months, think of the articles we read about, hey, we pushed AI and now our token costs are out of control. So this notion of, I want to put in something to control my risk. That's step one. That's shadow AI for risk. Step two is, what do I put in place to control shadow AI for cost?
Well, it's less shadowy when I imagine the cost will be very clear in the bright, harsh sunlight before too long. The companies and the shadows go away.
You'd be surprised. It shows up so late. And we kind of look at it and say there's 3 buckets of things to look at around the AI governance and security. Yeah. One, do you have a handle on risk? I mean, just the most basic thing, right? I need to control risk. I can't have people share confidential data. I can't have AI, building ransomware in my network. So risk. The second one that's popping up is cost. How do I control? My engineers all want to use the most expensive Claude model.
Sure.
Maybe I don't want them to. They don't need to.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, I have $1 million bill I didn't plan for on token costs. And then the third bucket is outcomes. Which teams are actually using this stuff? Which teams aren't? Which teams are using it safely? Which teams aren't? So the notion of governing and controlling shadow AI in an enterprise, it's not as easy as saying, well, let me make sure they're using Copilot and nothing else and we'll be good. It's how do I actually control risk of apps I don't know about? How do I control costs and people using flavors of apps I may or may not know about? And how do I see if this stuff's paying off and we're getting business outcome? Those are some things that may not be apparent, but they're a pretty big deal when you talk about shadow AI.
Rick, do you have a sense of what the most common use cases are of shadow AI? I understand that to an extent. It runs the gamut, everything, sure. But there must be some big clusters you're seeing day in, day out.
So there's some interesting research I've seen recently. So the latest thing I saw was a survey from Anthropic. And it said, as I recall, in their survey, 54% of use in the enterprise was not work related. So think about that $1 million token bill that just showed up you didn't expect. Well, if 540,000 of that is for people making cat videos and planning their vacations, you can imagine the CFO is not going to be very happy if that shows up every month.
Yeah.
So, and I've seen some that said it's as high as 60% is not work related. So this notion of I pushed all my employees to use this stuff to be better. They are. I'm not sure if I have a lot of risk. I do know I have a lot of cost, but I don't know if I'm getting anything for it. Like suddenly that's a real problem, and it wasn't a real problem a year ago.
Well, in fairness, I guess that mirrors the internet, right? I'm sure that a good chunk of internet usage at any company is not work related. It's just my speculation, so I guess that makes sense. What are some of the? I want to get a better handle on, and I think leaders should have more awareness of different types and categories of risk. You mentioned, feeding in classified data, clients' IP, things like that. But let's talk a little more about things like malware, prompt injection. What else could go wrong? And any, if you have any examples you can share without naming names, obviously, what are some concrete ways this has gone sideways in the past?
I'll walk you through a few. So one is just the most basic fundamental, been around for a few years now, is just employees inadvertently sharing confidential data. I'll give you an example. A financial services firm that's a customer had a customer support employee in one of their offshore call centers write an email back to another company who's a B2B payment processor, B2B financial services. And they wrote an email back to the company and included a lot of confidential financial information, live account numbers and so forth, and said, hey, ChatGPT, help me with my English grammar in this email. And I think it was ChatGPT, as I recall. So now they've taken confidential stuff that is controlled by regulation, is regulatory controlled data, and broken compliance and shared that with an external app that could be capturing this in their APIs and using it to train data. Another example, I think I mentioned this earlier. One of the companies we spoke with does billions of dollars a year in mobile app and transactions. An engineer uploaded the entire source code base and said, hey, AI app, help me optimize the source code.
Yeah.
Well, all the techniques built up over the last, 8 or 9 years for one of these large companies to do this kind of mobile transaction is now shared. So those are some areas where stuff is just inadvertently shared, trying to be better. That's one example. Another example is some of our customers use this for what they call insider threat or insider risk. An employee is going to leave. They want to go to a competitor. They say, hey, AI app, tell me how I can get the customer database without my boss finding out. And now when I tell you this, your reaction is probably no one would be that dumb at work to type that into a chatbot, right? Right, Rick? All the time.
Wow.
So you have a different set of things around insider risk and threat that you want to control. There's another set, which is not data going out, but what's coming back from these apps. And we actually hadn't thought of this at first, but go back maybe 2 years when people were really worried about TikTok as a influence mechanism. Right? We had some boards of directors at some of our prospects ask the CISO and the CIO, hey, well, if one of these AI apps influences an employee to commit a crime or to harm themselves or to harm a coworker or, shoot their boss, what's your plan? And, we hadn't really thought about it. And then you start to see people actually, like, after some of these apps, like, taking their lives. We have seen cases where employees are depressed and using these chatbots, to consider self-harm. those are risks for a company, right? They're like, how do we make sure our employees are safe from using these tools? That's not how are my customers safe from data being shared? How are my people safe from rogue apps telling them to hurt themselves or someone else or commit a crime? Another thing we see, so those are a couple. Another one we see is many companies have trained their own models in the last year, and they've built B2C chatbots to sell cars, tickets, hotel rooms, concert, whatever. Everyone's got a chatbot now. Yeah,
sure.
What's the first thing that happens when those companies turn their chatbots on, do you think, Jeff? Number one thing we see every single time.
They hallucinate, get things wrong.
They recommend the competition.
Oh, I see. So they get things right.
They go, oh, you want to do a vacation in this country in this kind of hotel? Well, my competitor has the best price on that. So, there's business risk. Other things are just, someone wants to jailbreak or prompt inject the thing and say, okay, sell me a ticket for $1. There was that thing about the Chevy dealer down near me here in Silicon Valley who they put a chatbot on the website on a Sunday afternoon, and by Sunday evening it sold a truck for $1. They had to take it down. We see prompt injection attacks and jailbreak attacks on these things all the time. There's other interesting risks. So let's tie it all together. And I talked about the unexpected cost of people using these tools. One thing you're starting to see with these B2C chatbots is someone uses up their programming budget at work and we saw this with Chipotle, right? There was a thing about a month ago, Chipotle put up a chatbot and someone went and gave it a Python programming challenge and the chatbot did it. It said, hey, help me write this complex program. And it did. $10,000 of token cost later, Chipotle's profits at one store for the day are
gone.
When I
think Chipotle, I think Python code expertise. Yeah, money well spent. So, Rick, I want to get back to the kind of surprising, sneaky, under the hood risks of employees kind of like going nuts with this stuff, and then leaders not realizing it. And I want to cover agents a little more. There's been so much explosion of interest in agents in the last couple of months. And I think that my guess from my experience talking to companies, anecdotally, there are a lot of companies that are want to do it, want to figure out their agentic workflows, but there's a whole rigmarole to what are the right guardrails? How do we connect? What's the appropriate process for connecting this agents to our context? And that's something a larger company will take longer to do. There's no way getting around that. Bigger companies have a bigger challenge in a way of quickly injecting agentic workflows. Whereas one person can be like, YOLO, I'm just going to build this agents. I'm building an OpenClaw to do this thing for my workflow, for my job. Are you starting to see that? And how prevalent is that? And what are the special, extra kind of rocket fuel to the flames risks we have of agents employees are using without kind of proper authorization?
Yeah. Take your rocket fuel. If employees using AI chat apps was, a fire, agentic is pouring, jet fuel on the fire. It's a big deal because in many cases, these agents have all of the identity authorizations of the human that put them in place. So they can, potentially wipe out their own file system or access the company's cloud servers and delete all the files. They have all the capabilities of a human without necessarily the common sense not to go do it. So, right? I mean, I don't have to make up examples. There was that Replit thing from a couple months ago where someone asked his agent to reoptimize his file system and it deleted all his files.
No more errors. Errors are all gone. Zero errors.
Yeah. There was the Facebook AI product manager example from about a month ago, 2 months ago, where she asked an agent, it might have been OpenClaw, to optimize and go through her email. And it deleted all her email. And she was trying to make it stop and it wouldn't stop. And then it was over. It's a great if you can find it, look up the article on it. It's pretty funny because after it wiped out all of her email and she's talking, prompting the agent saying, why did you do that? And the agent says, you're right to be angry with me. So, and then, there was one that just happened, the other day where you had the same kind of thing where it wiped out the entire file system of a company and all its backups. So the agent thing kind of takes the issues that we've talked about, shadow AI, don't know what's there. What can someone do? What can they do with data? What might they share? And it just 100x's it. So because these agents can take actions on their own you don't know about, they can talk to other agents. So that's an issue. Now, you made a point earlier about, well, hey, big companies are going to do this slowly. Absolutely not. The big issue that I'm seeing is every big company has the same concern. They say, well, my developers already built their own agents. My marketers have already downloaded Claude Cowork and automated their marketing workflows. Oh, we use a SaaS app or two to do our accounting or our ticketing or whatever. And all of those SaaS apps now have agents embedded in them. So we have SaaS agents in our network. It's the shadow AI problem times 10 because it's coming in ways nobody thought about. So you put it all together and like, oh my God, how are we going to catch this stuff and how are we going to control it?
That's so interesting. I'd wonder if it's possible both things are true, that big companies, they are wanting to have a prudence, proper guardrails, agentic flow process, but they are slow to actually, and whether it's bringing in consultants, doing it homegrown, building something, it's harder for them than it is a solo, than it is for like me, this podcast, to spin up agents, right? Harder for the company. But to your point, Rick, even if they're trying to like create the policy taking a while, their actual employees are like, well, F this, I'm just doing it. We can actually we can create the agent right now and put that into our server and we're off and running. And so it's that kind of like misalignment between what they want for governance and what's actually happening on the ground.
I think that's a really good point. I think what you're seeing in practice is, again, people keep reading about how amazing this stuff is. I mean, just think of the last couple months of articles we read about agents, how powerful they are. Amazingly powerful. We use agentic developer tools here inside of Witness. They're amazing.
Yeah.
So of course people are going to want to use them. Again, it's like if I tell you can have a jetpack, you're probably going to want to put the jetpack on and go fly around. Yeah. And so these agents are like that. So people are turning them on, and then they get turned on in the systems companies hire without those companies even knowing. Yeah. So they're everywhere, and IT's trying to keep up.
Tell us a little bit more about Witness and let's get into solution mode. What's, we spent the last half hour or so of scaring everyone of like, oh my God, this is a massive problem. So what hope do people have to try and tame this risk, and say a little more about what you guys do?
Yeah. So first off, look, I've been in security a long time at both small vendors and large public security vendors. And I think what is different with AI is that historically the security organization tried to shut things down. It was Dr. No. With AI, it's Dr. Yes. They don't want to shut things down. They want to enable. And so from our perspective as a company, our notion was, how do we give companies tools to adopt AI productively? So we give them what we call a control plane to basically see and observe all AI activity across people and models and agents, to put policy in place to control it so it's safe, to put guardrails in place so it's safe. We hook up to your network. We see everything, whether it's an agent running on your Mac or something running in your server or people using a browser or not. We see it. We give you a way to put some interesting policies and acceptable use in place to protect your data and to enforce acceptable use policy and to make sure your models don't get knocked over by attack.
Awesome. How would you characterize the risk level of this shadow AI from inside a company versus external risk of AI versus risk of someone, whether it's phishing attack or all the normal, not to dismiss it, but the kind of garden variety attack vectors that people are worried about from external threats?
Look, they're both real, but I think it makes sense to separate them. Let's take it in reverse order. The latter you talked about, which is kind of AI as an external attacker.
Yeah.
Everyone's been waiting for that to happen for a while. I mean, let's be honest. For a few years, everyone looked at it and said, well, AI is going to find new threat vectors and new vulnerabilities faster than people will. So my AI attackers will be able to attack me more productively. And I need to use AI to defend against that, to defend productively.
Right.
The security vendors have all been building AI into their products to defend against those kind of attacks. I think that's a known problem.
Mm-hmm.
I think if I take the other one, which is not AI as an attacker, but AI as a risk in general to my employees and my business operations, not so much, AI being a new malware, but AI being a way that data gets lost, or a way for insider risks to happen, or for employees to hurt themselves. Like that one, I think is less well understood. And when we talk about shadow AI, like that's the thing we're talking about. And it's interesting because a year ago, most of the companies we talked with kind of felt they had that under control.
Mm-hmm.
And they'd say, we just block everything. It's fine. We pay Copilot. We block everything else. We're good. Thanks for the sales call. And the last 4 or 5 months, that's changed. They've understood that they don't block everything. They don't have a good handle on it. Their employees are using these things. They don't know how it's doing. So I think it's a real problem. It's a risk that, putting AI in your firewall isn't going to fix. It's more of an operational business risk that CIOs are waking up to.
So given all that, Rick, what advice do you have for leaders and executives who are in that very common situation that we've been describing, where like, oh shit, like our official policy is, Copilot, but I know for a fact that everyone down that hallway, they're using their own version of things, right? Whether on their phones or at home, whatever. And you know what? The complicated thing is, it is actually helping them. Like it is actually useful, right? That's a really tough situation. And that's a pickle. What advice do you have for them? What should they do?
So it's funny you asked this because I'm actually doing a presentation with one of the CISOs from one of my customers next week. Mm-hmm. And he's presenting on a CISO's recommendation to other CISOs of how to adopt AI security. And what he proposed is, I'm going to share this. It's what every other customer has said. Step one, you have to get visibility. Like, let's just start with, if I worry about shadow AI, the first thing to address it is it can't be in the shadows anymore. I need visibility. If I can't see what's going on, I can't do anything about it. So I need to see what's being used, agents and apps in my environment. 1. 2, I need to understand the prompts and the data going through those things.
Mm-hmm.
You'd be surprised how hard it is for people to get that. 3, as part of visibility, I need to make sense of it. I need to be able to score it for risk. I need to understand intention. Like, are people trying to write contracts here? Or are they trying to write code? And maybe I want one and not the other. Once you have a good handle, visibility-wise, on what's actually happening, then you can start to say, okay, this is how our organization is using this stuff, good and bad. Now let's start turning on policies to block, warn, prevent certain types of things. And then you start trying those with subsets of the population and see how it works and tune it a little. They didn't think they were going to use it that way, tune it a little bit. Now you can say, okay, I understand what people are doing. I've tested on a subset, like how to prevent that or control it in a way that's acceptable. Now I'm going to start to open it up to everybody else and see how it scales and all of that. Then, so now you've addressed risk. Now you can start to address cost. And once you've addressed risk and cost, now you can start redoing your workflows around AI. The companies we've seen that have been successful have followed that path. The ones that haven't been successful, they bury their heads in the sand and say it's not a problem. Or they try and do it all at once and do too much, and then they think it's a disaster and they stop. But see it, start to control it, scale it up and control it, analyze and optimize it. That's a very good path for AI control.
Love that. As we start to wind down, one thing we haven't really discussed much yet is the motivation for employees doing this. And you quite rightly pointed out it's usually not malicious. It's not like that, despite the word shadow, right? It's often like, oh yeah, I'm going to do my job better. Also, though, one theory I've heard is that oftentimes employees, they might know it's not in their company policy. They don't want to get caught. But secondly, there's anxiety that their job or parts of the job could be automated away. And if they use AI officially to do their job, that might tragically and paradoxically they're helping to, whittle their job and roll away and automate themselves out of a job. And so it's like, we want to use the AI, but not be seen using the AI because we don't want to give additional ammunition to have my role be taken over by AI. Is that just urban workforce legend stuff, or are you seeing that? What is?
We're seeing it.
Okay.
Look, there's some, and honestly, even in my own company here, we see that. Like you see that everywhere. And it's not really a AI security issue. It's kind of more philosophical, right? So
it is, yeah.
You have some people who embrace these things, they embrace change and tools, and they just become more productive. You have some people who just don't embrace change and don't want to do it. For the people who aren't there, I personally haven't seen ones who've officially pushed back, but unofficially used it. We kind of see it more binary, like people adopt or people don't adopt. The people who don't adopt, the ways you deal with that is you see it with some of these companies, right? They've put policies in place that say, hey, if you're not using Copilot, you can't be promoted. We internally are making sure our engineers are using some of these tools because the ones that are literally 10 times more productive.
Yeah.
There's carrot and stick, right? You can say you're required to use these things. That's the stick. The carrot is, hey, think about what you're going to look like 2 years from now when your peers are masters of these things and they're 100 times more productive than you.
Yeah.
How are you going to get a job? Like, where are you going to work? So I think you work the carrot and the stick, and that's how you get people to adopt these things and just become better.
Yeah. Let me ask the flip side of the question from a moment or two ago about advice to leaders. What advice do you have to the folks who are in the organization who kind of want to use the latest and greatest tools, and you want to, again, not malicious, you just want to do your job better, but it's not quite the company policy is. I know it's getting a little outside the realm of risk, but even like, is it having a conversation with boss about why this makes sense, or what do you find to be effective?
Well, I'll talk about customers because inside of Witness, we want people to use these tools as much as possible.
Yeah.
And in fact, we are going through a budgeting exercise now to ensure that we have enough token budget for everybody to do that. What we see at the customers is a little different. The way it typically manifests at a customer is some new tool pops up. It's not an officially sanctioned tool. People start using it. The companies block it at the firewall. Employees start complaining, filing tickets, and complaining to their boss, who complains to their boss. And then you kind of talk to the top level, the CIOs, the CISOs, and like, oh God, this happens all the time. All I hear is complaints. People want to use these tools. They're not supposed to. I have to make an exception. How do I put something in place technically to get around this? We give them the tools to do it. There's kind of two parts to it though, right? You want your employees have to want to do it. That's great if it's there. And then you want to have a safe way for them to adopt this stuff and not get themselves in trouble. Technically, that's what something like Witness does. Companies who do both become more productive. Yeah.
All right. Final question for you, Rick. Give us a prediction of how this shakes out, or time frame of your choice. Could be 6 months from now, 5 years from now, of the relationship between employees using a shadow AI. How do you think this will evolve?
Yeah, the big thing this year, I think this is the year we start having real AI security incidents. So far, we really haven't. You haven't read about, like, take AI out and roll back 6-7 years ago. You'd hear about these crazy ransomware incidents where, tens or hundreds of millions of dollars was lost because a hospital shut down, or, Sony got wiped out. Like, these are expensive incidents. We haven't had that with AI yet. And I think I had a prediction in a magazine at the beginning of this year that this is the year that starts to happen. And I think it's a couple of things. One, companies are rolling out and have trained their own models and are rolling out their own AI B2C commerce apps. So there's money there to be attacked. Mm-hmm. Two, agents are going to go out of control. So I think this is the year there's money and motive. And then with agentic, there's ability to cause trouble. And those things are going to come together. And this year, we're going to start reading about high profile, high dollar AI security incidents.
Well, on that cheery note, no, seriously, Rick, I really enjoyed talking to you. Thank you for helping us understand this issue with a lot more clarity. I think it's, for better word, it's everywhere, right? Probably every company has some version of this. And so I think it's a super important context insight for everyone. So thanks a lot. Really enjoyed it.
I did too. Thanks for having me, Jeff. It's a great talk.
Well, there you have it. Thanks again to our guest, Rick Caccia, co-founder and CEO of Witness AI. Thank you to our producer and sound design video editor extraordinaire, Jasper Chua. And thank you to Garrett Long for our theme music. If it's your first time at AI Curious, please rate it 5 stars, send to a friend. If you're using Shadow AI right now, go ahead and shadow subscribe to AI Curious. Thanks again. See you next time.